You want to hear my HCA new grad story? I have actually never told this story on social media in all these years. I've told it a couple of times in some keynote speeches, but that's it. So I'm going to try really hard to not get emotional because I am not good at sharing my emotions except for, anger. I'm really good at that. Okay. I'm in my pajamas here. Sorry. Oh, there's still a lot of trauma attached to this. And if you've ever wondered why I'm so cynical, you might understand better after this. Okay, so where I was working as a new grad, I had already worked there for a year and a half because I was working as a nurse apprentice during school. So they hired me as a graduate nurse, and then when I passed the NCLEX, they hired me as an RN. Okay, so by the time this had happened, I'd already worked there a year and a half or something, maybe longer. Get through all of the new grad orientation, no problem, that was fine. Shout out Shannon, my preceptor, she was awesome. No issues. And then I'm on my own after orientation. I don't even remember how long my orientation was. A week. Maybe a week. I was on my own. That's it. So fresh out of the gate, okay? So then I was on night shift. I get a text from my manager that says, I need to speak to you before your shift tonight. Come in and meet with me at 6:30. Cause for concern, because what? But I go, and she's meeting with someone in her office. So I'm waiting outside. And then a few minutes later, one of my best friends, Marlene, I've changed her name for this, comes out of her office in tears, sobbing. And we look at each other what the fuck? I have no idea why she's there. She's surprised to see me too. I go into her office, and she proceeds to tell me that I'm a failure as a nurse. I've been a nurse a week, okay? And I'm stunned, and I'm like, what do you mean? And she says, I have received nothing but complaints about you from patients and families every day. And I remember being so confused because nothing had happened. There had been no incidents, no issues, nothing. I'm searching my brain and my memory did I miss something? Did I forget? No, everything had been fine, no issues. So I ask her for specifics and examples, who, when, what. And in true toxic nurse manager fashion, she says, I can't share that. That's, it's not public, it has to be kept confidential, which is bullshit, by the way. When they tell you that, that's bullshit. But I didn't know that then. So she just berates me for a really long time and says that if I get a single more complaint about you, you will be terminated. And I was in panic mode because I didn't know back then anything that I know now, right? I didn't know what progressive discipline was. I didn't know that she couldn't just fire me, that there has to be documented, verbal, written, all that stuff, right? You can't go from point A to point Z without a few other steps in between. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to be terminated because eventually someone will complain. Inevitably, that's just life. So I'm sitting there stunned, oh my, I'm a brand new nurse. The imposter syndrome is so real at that point, right? All I want is to do a good job. And you're telling me that I'm a failure and I will inevitably be fired at some point. So I leave her office and I have to go get report. Now you know how intimidating it is to even get report as a new grad, right? Imagine walking out of that and having to it was horrible. So I'm in a daze, go about my shift, sit down a little while later, finally to chart. So I'm at the nurse's station. The charge nurse is kind of diagonal across the nurse's station from me, and she's on the phone talking to someone. But I can hear her. She's trying to be quiet, but I can clearly hear her. And I hear her say, She's done it again. Except this time, I don't have just one. I have 2 new grads on the floor that she just did this to again. And she's like angry, you can tell. And I'm just, again, stunned, and I'm listening to her, and it becomes clear, listening, that this is a pattern. Like, she does this to all of the new grads, which, let that sink in. And I firmly believe that she does it to ensure like the highest customer satisfaction rates for her unit, for herself, to make herself look good, essentially, right? It's her way, her sick, twisted way of like proactively scaring everyone into submission before anything could even happen. And new grads that, are naive and don't know any better, so that we are always running around bending over backwards trying to do everything for everybody, which is impossible. Like, it's impossible to keep that up, right? But that's what she created in her staff. And so I talked to Marlene later in the shift finally, and guess what? Guess who had the identical conversation with our manager? Identical. Like, what are the astronomical chances that both of us, 1 week in, have been such failures, right? So it was toxic, and I lived under that threat for a long time. My goal was just like get my year in, my new grad year, that all important year, and then get the hell out, because it was so stressful working there under that, Anytime anybody complained about things that even were like beyond my control, like the wait in the ER or something, I would panic that they're going to complain and it's going to come back on me and I was going to be terminated. So I think I stayed like 1.5 years, maybe longer. And I left finally through another course of events. And my friend Marlene, who we went through nursing school together. We graduated together. We were nurse apprentices there for 1.5 years together. We went through the new grad, thing together. She was one of my best friends. She stayed. I left. And I know that manager continued to harass her on a regular basis for a very long time. I would talk to her every week, and she would have a new story about getting called into the office and being criticized over something just insane, ridiculous. And this constant threat, this constant hanging in front of her of, you're going to be terminated. I think she did suspend her at one point. She wrote her up. Like, it was a constant, never-ending riding her ass. And it went on for a long time, and I saw the toll that it took on Marlene. And it was not very long into her career that she took her own life. And you cannot tell me that did not play a part. I know that it did. That was my introduction to nursing. That was my introduction to toxic nurse managers.